All right, everybody, and welcome to the Colts Bros podcast. I'm your host, Grant Sinning. Tonight, I am joined by the Colts Bros and Jay and Jeremy, formerly of the Draft Indie podcast. And they're here to join us for a final rankings podcast before the draft on Thursday. How is everybody doing tonight?
Great. The anticipation is killing me, though.
Yeah, we're in the last stages here. It's a slow crawl, but it's getting there.
Has anyone else reached content saturation?
I have been consuming very little content this year, and partially because I just don't find this draft class that interesting. But I'm definitely sick of the tweets, if that's what you mean.
I feel like I've read less draft stuff than I ever have before this year. Which is interesting because the Colts have never really had this high of a draft pick recently. But I've been focusing less on like just content out there and just kind of doing my own thing.
I've been really happy with how I've paced myself so far. I took a little while that I didn't do too much watching and reading, and now this last week or so I've been getting in it, and I'm feeling good.
I think I just started too late or early. It was like, because I mean the season went so poorly. It's just like I've been trying to consume everything draft since like October. I know that's weird, but it's what it is. But we are here tonight to do our top 5 position rankings through all the position groups. Some will go quickly because we only have one person with rankings, and some will go a little longer because there's takes to be had. I mean, I guess, this is just kind of where we're gonna have a little bit of fun with it. We'll take some questions and stuff at the end, and then we'll just kind of go from there. If you are listening live, and there are some of you, you can type in questions here in the chat on YouTube, and we will try and get to them towards the end. But do you guys want to start offense or defense?
Offense.
Let's go offense.
All right, let's just start with it. Let's do quarterbacks. So what we'll do is let's just do a little bit of round table, and then everybody kind of go through their 5. And after everyone's gone through their 5, let's discuss. I've got everybody written down here except for someone, and we'll let them make stuff up on the fly. So Garrett, why don't you go first? Quarterback rankings 1 through 5.
Oh, good. All right. Yes, so right away. Well, my number 1 quarterback is Lamar Jackson, which is a great moment for me to be seeing him go through the draft process right now, because I remember noticing him when he was a true freshman at Louisville, and he made this – it was garbage time against Florida State, I think, and he made this insane throw that I think I've tweeted about a million times by now. But that's kind of – like, you don't see many single plays where you just realize that a guy is, goes from a guy you've never heard of to, potential really good NFL starter. But that's when it flashed for me. And ever since then, obviously, he was so dominant in that sophomore season when he won the Heisman. And the things he can do on the field, that caliber of athlete that he is, he makes him the clear-cut number 1 QB in my eyes. It isn't really that close, even though there are a lot of guys in this class that I like, but none that I really love for quarterbacks. So Lamar's number 1. After that, I'm going to go with Baker.
Okay.
Statistically, the most successful college quarterback of all time in terms of just this last season he had, but also his entire career at Oklahoma has been really amazing. But probably a little bit reliant on a supporting cast, especially starting out in the NFL, so projecting him a little bit. After that, I'm going to go Darnold. The highest highs and lowest lows, even maybe of any player in this class, quarterback or not. It's pretty crazy. You watch his good game, you're blown away. You watch a bad game by him, you think there's no way he's a first-round player at all. But if there's an upside guy in this class, it's him. 4, I'll go Rosen, sort of in the Eli Manning mold. Not really an amazing college player, frankly, in terms of his production. But UCLA was a stupid program, so who cares? More of an intermediate guy in terms of where he succeeds. I tend to favor people who can just chuck the deep ball incredibly well. So so I'm biased against him. But I'll have him at 4. And then 5 is Josh Allen, I guess. Whatever.
All right. Alex, why don't you go next? Give us your top 5.
Okay, for me, it's... I've had to debate this a lot. I tweeted out some ranking, like, maybe a couple weeks ago, and it's shifted since then. My number 1 for a while has been Baker, and it's still Baker slightly. I just think the numbers he put up, even in like a low offense, whatever you make of that, they're just unprecedented. And I saw him live against Ohio State, and maybe that's impacting my views a lot, but he looked of an NFL quarterback.
Is that when he spiked the flag in your field?
That's what he spiked. I was all here for. I was here for that. We deserve it. We deserve that.
You did deserve it, yeah.
But he, I think, has every trait, at least, you look for. Maybe not skill set, but he has like the personality, certainly, of a franchise quarterback and a really good player in the league. So he's my number 1. Lamar's number 2. 2 through 4 is a really big cluster for me. I can see cases for any of them, but I think Lamar presents the surest thing out of any of this group, while also having the upside due to his just insane talent. But I think he's the surest thing, probably in this entire quarterback class. 3 is Rosen, who I've become a little lower on, but I just remember seeing him at UCLA, and like especially as a freshman, he has lived up to that hype, but maybe not quite the hype because he was projected as like the best quarterback ever, really, as of like that's a little extreme, but he was projected as this really like elite top 5 quarterback, and he's lived up to that for the most part. So I'd have him 3, Darnold at 4. I echo what Garrett said, and then 5 I have Allen, who I'm actually higher on than draft Twitter seems to be. I think has the chance to be a good player, but certainly he's not in the same tier as any of those top 4 guys.
Jeremy.
My number 1 guy is actually Josh Rosen. He's been there for a long time, and I'm sticking with it. I thought he did really well at UCLA, especially when I'm watching other prospects on that team. He had very little around him, including a horrible O-line. So I think he could do quite well. I think his floor is still pretty high while still having potential to move up. Baker Mayfield is very close behind at number 2. I don't knock him a lot because of his height, but I probably put him behind Rosen because of that. Number 3 is Sam Darnold. I pretend like I don't have a bias against USC quarterbacks, but I entirely do. So I dropped him. Number 4, I have Lamar Jackson. I haven't watched him a ton, to be honest, because I just there was just so much talk around him that I just avoided it at all cost.
Because if you don't like him, you're a racist. And if you do like him, you're ignoring everything else.
Well, and as soon as you start talking about him, everyone starts bringing up, well, not everyone, but plenty bring up, is he a wide receiver? And I just think that's just stupid talk. He doesn't project there, and I just didn't want to get involved. And number 5, is just like everyone else, I have Josh Allen. It's not that I don't like him. It's just this is a really stacked quarterback class, I think. So he could very well become an elite starter, but I still think he's number 5.
Jay.
Yeah, so starting at the top, I've got Baker Mayfield as quarterback 1. He's just so accurate and has been so productive in that offense. And he's just the coolest guy ever. I just want to be his friend. For me, after that, 2, 3, 4 is pretty close. I have Rosen, then Lamar Jackson, and then Darnold. And on a given day, I could be talked into any of them. They all have their ups and their downs. And a really big fan of Lamar Jackson. He could be just a spectacular player, and I'm really excited to watch him play as long as it's not for the Jaguars. Yes. And then 5, I have Josh Allen. Yeah, the Patriots too. That could be worse. 5, I've got Josh Allen. He could be good because everybody hated Carson Wentz 2 years ago, and then he was the MVP through 3/4 of the season, and kind of has the similar career path as Allen, but he's definitely got some issues there. But yeah, Baker's number 1 for me.
All right, for me, I've got Lamar one. I really, truly think he has got everything that you need to be one of the best quarterbacks in a long time. Now, what does he need to do to progress? He's going to need, so what he does well, and this is counter to whatever I think you read about him a lot, he goes through his progressions very well. I think the thing that he stands in the pocket too. He's not just a runner, but one of the things that I think that he needs to get better at is those deep shots, and especially when he's on the move. For a mobile quarterback, his accuracy on the run necessarily isn't the greatest, for what you'd want on like a bootleg or something like that. But I really think he's got some of the talent to just truly be one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in a long time. I hope he sits a year. I know I hope he goes to a team that will not rush him into things, give him some time to let the game slow down for him, and let him truly absorb an NFL playbook, and I think he'd be great. Josh Rosen, big fan of his. I think when he's on, he is probably the most solid quarterback in this class. He's good at just about. You put him in like a West Coast offense, he's really going to shine. He's got some durability issues with injuries every year, so he's not been able to play all games of his college career every season. That's a big issue with him. I love Baker Mayfield. I think he's got a great attitude, very accurate. I think those three are all really, really good. Sam Darnold, I said it last week, the bad Sam Darnold's probably the worst quarterback I've ever watched, and the good Sam Darnold is a good one. So there's that. And then there's Josh Allen, and we won't really get into him because we all have him last, but it's interesting that no one tried to be cute and try and put in like a Kyle Lauletta or someone like that. Or
I'm definitely not going to waste time watching anybody who's not.
Oh, absolutely not. No, anyone who had to like watch like Mike White tape, like I feel bad for them. Like
they brought it upon themselves. I don't.
They chose to do that.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. All right, continuing on with offense, we'll move to running back, and I'm gonna preface this by saying that I know people who are in my dynasty leagues that are drafting next week are going to listen to this, and this is not indicative of where I'll take them in my dynasty league, so don't try and cheat me here. Running back number 1, Saquon Barkley. I've tried to convince myself that he's not the best one of this group, but I think he's just all around has everything that you absolutely need. Number 2, Darius Geis. I think he's got. I think he's a first-round talent as well. I don't think that he. He's kind of like Fournette. We didn't see him catch a lot last year, but Fournette didn't have a problem with that this year. Then I got to go. Okay, so here we go. I've said a lot on this podcast and on Twitter. Sony Michel's my guy. I got Nick Chubb rated number 3. And that's just because I really think he's back, and his yards after contact stuff is crazy. And I just think that he'll be a really nice powerhouse running back for a team looking for someone who needs that. Sony Michel's my running back 4. I've talked about him a lot. Explosive, dynamic. Jeremy, you made a really good point, and I think it is a point that everyone needs to really pay attention to with him. You talked about it on Twitter, Jeremy. Was it one fumble for every 54 snaps?
That's right.
That's a ridiculous number. That's really, really high. So now running backs have changed that in the past, but it's one of those things that's kind of tough. But I still think his explosion and everything else that he can do is just something special. At number 5, I've got John Kelly out of Tennessee, and I am the only person with John Kelly on this list. And I'm okay with that. I think that John Kelly brings. He is so tough to bring down. He is one of those guys that for the Colts, if it's the fourth round or something, if it's the 4th round, and John Kelly is still up on the board, I think he'd be a great running back to pair with Marlon Mack, and I'd love it. He's hard. He can catch. He can do it all. It's just that he's not the most athletic guy, but he is just one tough dude. Jay, hit us up with running backs.
All right, so I have two. Have Barkley number 1 and Geis number 2. I actually prefer Geis as a pure runner. I think he's a better running back running the ball than Barkley is. But nowadays, with the modern NFL, the best way that a running back can affect the game is going to be through the passing game. And Barkley is an exceptional pass catcher and pass blocker. So you've got to put him at number 1. He's probably like a mid first round value for me. He'd be pretty low on that just because I don't think he's a great running back, but for the non-running the ball things that he does and his athleticism, you've got to consider him up there. 2, I've got Geis because he's really, really good, and he can possibly catch the ball. He's a good pass blocker, and he can run the ball really, really well. He's really violent and hard to bring down. And if he's healthy, I think he's going to be the best running back in the class, possibly. 3, I've got Nick Chubb, just like you did. Yeah, his injury really sapped him for a little while, but it looks like he's back, and he just put up a spectacular combine. And if he can really be back, then he's a really good running back option there, possibly top of the second round. Royce Freeman's my 4th running back, which a lot of people are down on Royce. Maybe it's just that I like the Ducks, but I think could be a really good running back at the next level still. He was ultra productive in college his whole time there, just putting up 1 billion yards and touchdown after touchdown. And he's actually a really good pass catcher and pretty good as a pass blocker, which I obviously value. So I've got him there, but right behind him. So my 4, 5, 6 is really close. 6 would probably be John Kelly. But my 5th one, I've got Sony Michel. And yeah, he's a really good running the ball, but there's concerns about he doesn't catch the ball very much, and those fumbles are definitely an issue. And I just want to give a quick shout out to future Colt running back Ito Smith. Day 3, he's going to be the pick, and I'm calling my shot. He's like, I think I just saw that he had 90 pass block reps and didn't allow a single sack this season.
That's pretty good for being 162 pounds.
Yeah.
No, he's like 195.
He's using some like martial arts techniques or something.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
he's really good pass blocker. He catches like 40 passes every single year, which is the best pass catcher in the class. And he's really, really, he's really good at juking guys. Really, his change of direction drills were really bad at the combine, but it doesn't show like that on field. He's got a killer jump cut that he'll make people look silly. There was like 3 or 4 different guys that looked like they got sniped against FSU.
Yeah.
Jay?
That's good.
Or not Jay, Jeremy.
Number 1, I have Barkley, which is no surprise to anyone. In this class, he's probably like the 7th or 8th best running back, but if I was evaluating him strictly as a wide receiver, he would be in the mix for the 1st or 2nd spot, so I have no problem putting him that high. Number 2, I have Geis, just like basically everyone else said. Number 3, I actually have Ronald Jones, which I think I'm the only one who has him listed.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been widely ignored because he pulled up on his 40 times, so I think he ran like a 4.65 or something like that, which at 205 pounds is pretty bad.
He ran that at his pro too.
Yeah, but I think when healthy, he's a 4-5 guy, at least from what I see on tape. He's a big yards after contact guy, similar to Chubb. He's a proven receiver, which is nice. It's a nice combination to have a guy who can run up in the middle and is also a proven receiver. And he's got one of my favorite cuts in this class, probably. Number 4, I have Michael or Mitchell or whatever his name is. Michelle, sure. Everyone's pretty much said what needs to be said about him. The big concern is the fumbles, obviously. I wish someone would do a study on like fumbles and drops and how they improve or don't improve when guys get to the NFL. But it's worth noting at this point. And number 5, I have Chubb. Dropped him a little bit just because it appears that he's still healthy, but we never really know until a team evaluates him and drafts him. So I'm pretty comfortable with him there.
Yeah, Ronald Jones, I had a kind of like Jay. I had a log jam RB 6, 7, 8, which is awesome for the draft for us, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ronald Jones and Rashad Penny and Royce Freeman were all right there, log jammed in that spot. So I'm with you. I just really like what John Kelly brings to the table. Alex, hit us up. What you got?
I'm going to echo what Jay said. Well, Jay and Jeremy said that Saquon's my number 1. He's not the best running back in the class as a runner, but I really like what he does with the ball in his hands in other ways. I hope he gets used as a kick returner because he was devastating there in college. But yeah, I have Saquon. I have Nick Chubb 2, who I think is I think he's the best running back runner in the class. 2, and then the person who's really close to him is guys who I think compares well to him. I think they're both really good prospects. I'd be thrilled with either on day 2 or in round 2, I should say. Michelle's my 4th, and my 5th is Kerryon Johnson from Auburn, who I haven't seen that much about, but I just love his tape. He's the type of running back I gravitate to, which is just a bowling ball. A lot of strength, good yards per carry. He was really the bell cow, to me, at least from watching, of Auburn's offense, because though they would try to use their misdirection and their whole Auburn thing, it seemed to be their most productive play was always just him up the middle. So, and then when he got hurt in the postseason, it really devastated them, or I guess it was the Iron Bowl. But yeah, so Kerryon's my number 5. He's going to be really good. I'd be happy with him on day 3.
He's the one that caused us. He's the one who caused us to have the national champion UCF Knights.
Right.
Garrett.
Definitely Saquon, number 1. Actually, I will say, because we're all ragging on his ability as a runner, he still does incredible things in the running game. Like, he makes plays that no one else in this class really can, just because he's such an incredible athlete. And I think if you go back, maybe Alex might remember this better than I can, but I really felt like the indecisiveness that we saw from him on the ground this year wasn't as much of a factor earlier in his career with Penn State.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't really thought about that, but he did seem to develop that more this year. I'm not sure what's the reason for that, but when I was the highest on him, which was probably this time last year, or I guess after the season last year, that wasn't as big of a part of his game. So I wonder if it was coaching or something like that. But
yeah, definitely. He's just been there a long time, getting tons of carries. So who knows, really? Right. But I was really impressed by him when he was a younger player, and I didn't notice any glaring holes in his game like we saw this year. So I'm hoping that's something that can be ironed out. But even if he is just what we saw this year, he can still give you some really explosive plays on the ground, which is valuable. And obviously, the passing game skill set is what really makes him the number 1 guy in this class. After him, I'll also say Geis. I've been high on him for a while. Doesn't have that necessarily the pass game skill set, or at least not the pass catching production that you like to see from top prospects, but not many in this class do. So just his ability and his athleticism as a runner I'll have him number 2 for that. Then I'll actually put Ronald Jones at 3. I think that's where Jeremy had him. A crazy explosive guy, was in an offense that, in my opinion, didn't really suit his strengths at USC. So I'm hoping that he'll run some more outside zone type plays in the NFL. I think he can be great at that. Then I'll stack the Georgia running backs. I'll have Chubb and then Michelle as 4 and 5. They're both really incredible. I've been back and forth on them for basically their entire careers, which seems like a decade now because they've been at Georgia forever. But Chubb was one of the best running backs I had ever seen early, maybe in 2015, 2016, before the knee. And he's been getting a little bit better gradually ever since he came back. But I thought that Michelle had outproduced him in that time. So it was really that combine that made me think, okay, Chubb can still be that elite kind of runner. So I'll take him above Sony for that. But they're both really great players. And then after that, like you guys have mentioned, there are a million guys in this class that I could really see being great in certain situations, like Ito Smith, like Mark Walton from Miami, or Kerryon Johnson, or John Kelly. A lot of guys with balance and good playmaking ability. Just a matter of finding the right situations, which is ultimately what it comes down to with running backs. It's just, it's production for them is mostly circumstantial.
All right. I agree. It's a great class. I'm excited to see when we take one, where we take them, and who it is, because we have to take one because our running back core is Marlon Mack and like Josh Ferguson, and I think that's like it.
We still have Josh Ferguson. Oh my god.
Oh, we've got the what's his name from the Redskins?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. The big one.
Do we still have Turbin too?
Yeah.
Do we? Oh my god.
This is terrible. And the
I can't remember his name for the Redskins.
Matt Jones.
Matt Jones.
From Florida, I think.
Yeah, it was Florida. All right, let's move on to wide receivers, and this is going to be a long podcast. Jeremy, start us out, wide receivers.
Wide receiver 1, I have Cortland Sutton, merely for the reason that he is the only guy I see in this draft class that I think will be a true wide receiver 1 on his team. I think there's a ton of wide receiver 2 and 3 types, but he's the only one that I see at the top of the chart. He's extremely physical. He has great size. He challenges well on 50-50 balls. He still ran a 4.54 at 218 pounds, which is really nice to see. He could be a bust, but I just think he has by far the highest potential of anyone in the class. Number 2, I have DJ Moore. I have him slightly ahead of Calvin Ridley just because I like his frame a lot more. I think Ridley's a little undersized. He's got a bit of a thin frame.
Jeremy, I'm just curious. Where do you have him, like in a round, or what position?
Which one?
DJ Moore.
26 overall.
Okay, so lower first rounder. Okay.
Yeah, and to be honest, I feel like all my wide receivers, similar to a couple other positions, got bumped up just because the depth of the class is so bad that I felt like you almost have to bump them up.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of these guys would be like second rounders in other classes.
Yeah. I agree.
But I still like DJ Moore a lot. I think he has a lot of potential. He's going to be a great wide receiver 2, potentially right away. But yeah, it's just not a great class. Number 3, I have Calvin Ridley. Like I said, the hate has gone way too far for sure. At first, he was loved way too much. People are putting him in top 10s, which I didn't see at all. But he creates separation against defenders better than maybe anyone in this class.
Yes.
People were knocking his speed. He doesn't have great burst, but he has really nice long speed. If he gets away from the defender, he can definitely take it to the house every time. And also, there's always the question about his quarterback play was so awful at Alabama that he could be a lot better than we think he is because he's never had a quarterback at all.
Man, Jalen Hurts is awful. Anyway, continue on. But real quick.
Yep.
Everything you just said about Calvin Ridley, I 100% agree, and I'll get to him. He's my number 1. I'll tell you that in a minute. But yes, separation, that's the name of his game, and it's so important. Go ahead. Sorry.
Number 4 is where my obsession with kick return guys comes into play, and I have Christian Kirk from Texas A&M. 4.45 speed, has a pretty good size, is really nice hands, which a couple of these guys have issues with drops, and he doesn't seem to at all. And I actually noticed that he has some of the biggest hands in the class, which is probably not a coincidence. Number 5, I have Anthony Miller from Memphis, which he's a highly debated guy, but I really like his route running. He's a guy that if you can get him in space, he's a huge playmaker. If he can't get separation, he's a bit of a problem. But I still think he can be a huge playmaker at the next level. That's it.
Okay, so looking at your list, Anthony Miller and Christian Kirk were the two that no one else has. Christian Kirk, he was like a third rounder from me. I don't. He's really good with the ball in his hand, but separation, I just don't think it's there for him. I think he's got to be schemed open.
That's partially true. And to be honest, a big obsession with him was his playmaking skills in all levels, in the return game. I think I've just had an issue with how bad the Colts return game has been over the past 4 or 5 years that I found myself liking DBs and wide receivers more just because they had some return abilities. Guys like Dante Pettis.
Hey,
it might be recency bias, but
Quan Bray can't hurt you anymore. He's on the
he
Bills.
Hurt us so bad.
He's on the Bills now. He can't hurt you anymore.
So he can hurt the Bills. He actually moved closer to me.
Jay, hit us up with your wide receivers.
Okay, so from the top, I got Antonio Callaway, number 1. From the minute I watched him, like he's just, I love him as a wide receiver. I have a few different little things that I'm very specific about with wide receivers, which is why some of these guys are a little lower for me than for other people. I like guys that can catch the ball away from their frame, extend their arms and catch it away from their body, and suddenness in and out of routes. And both of those, I really like Antonio Callaway's game. I've learned, I think a little bit of me liking him is that as a number aesthetics guy, he's the only one that wears a wide receiver number. So all the other guys, they're wearing number 3 and number like 18 and stuff. Like, that's not okay. But 81, that's a solid number. But no, I really like Callaway. My number 2, I've got Calvin Ridley. He's another one. He catches the ball away from his frame. He creates separation. People hate him, but he doesn't deserve nearly the hate that he gets, but he shouldn't have been hyped up as a top 10 player to start with. I actually don't have any of these guys rated as a first-round player. I've got an early second on Callaway. It's the highest that I've got. It's just a lot of number 2 wide receivers. DJ Moore, he's my 3rd. He could be a number 1 one day, but I didn't love him. But he could be a wide receiver one day, but for the most part, I think he's probably a 2. And then I've got Deshaun Hamilton. I really like Hamilton. Really, really good route runner. He's probably going to be a slot receiver most of his career, but he's a really good route runner. And everything that you've seen with his attitude, he's got a great attitude for the game. He's going to be one of those guys that if he's on your team, everybody's going to love him. Sort of Reggie Wayne for a Colts type thing. Like Marvin Harrison was a better wide receiver, but everybody loves Reggie Wayne. It seems like more than Marvin ever was, aside from the fact that he killed people.
Yeah, well,
yeah. All right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But hey, that mustache tells no lies. That's all I'll say about that. Go ahead.
And then my 5th is Cortland Sutton. He's the one that's got the best chance of being the big X wide receiver, but there's just something about the way he catches the ball. Not only does he body catch the ball a lot, Matt Waldman talked about it. He kind of lets it get past his hands, and he's trying to clap with the ball in the middle to catch it instead of holding his hands tighter and letting the ball hit his hands. And then he didn't create as much separation as you would expect, especially given him playing really low competition. And then he'd play teams like Kansas State and get, for the most part, completely shut down. And so that's kind of concerning. He's got really good long speed, but I don't know how sudden he is to create separation. And he's not for all of his height and size, he's not a jump ball receiver. I know I heard people talking about him working out, I think it was the Senior Bowl, one of the bowl game type postseason things, and they're throwing him up passes against smaller cornerbacks, and so they were thinking that he'd try to body them up and jump up and catch a 50-50 ball, but he kept trying to stutter step and create separation at the line instead of just physically bodying the wide receiver or the cornerbacks. So that's my top 5.
My top 5, Calvin Ridley number 1, kind of like what Jeremy was saying, just separation. I mean, I think he's the best at that with his routes. Got 4.5 speed. I think the biggest knock on him, I think people talk about is his age. He's 24. He was a 20-year-old freshman, which is bizarre. But there's nothing in his game that makes me doubt him. I got him as first round, my only first rounder. I think he's gonna. I don't know where he's gonna land, but I think it's either gonna be the Ravens or the Cowboys. But we'll see. Number 2. This was a hot one. Dante Pettis. I love me some Dante Pettis. Now, Jeremy, when you're talking about Christian Kirk, Dante Pettis is better. I'm ready to debate you. Now, I'll tell you.
No, my biggest knock with him is his size.
Yeah,
I think he has a really thin frame. I do love his footwork. I will say that. People say he can't create separation, but in the red zone, I think he does an amazing job with his feet.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go. I'm sorry.
I was just saying. I saw quite a few clips of him getting away from press right away in the red zone with quick feet, which I really like. And he did set the record with 9 punt return touchdowns, which, again, that's my obsession right now. So,
I think. Okay, so someone said it best, and on Twitter, and I don't remember who it was. I'd give him all the credit for this. But watching him, you're like watching him, and it's like weird. It's like, okay, what's up with this guy? He runs weird routes, but it's okay. I think because if your quarterback can understand how you're going to run your routes, it's going to be okay. But once I don't know, he's not the tactician type guy. But everything that he does to get open, I think, is great. And like with his record for setting the record for the punt returns and stuff, you see it when he's got open field. His field vision is incredible. Like his ability to maneuver through the crowd. And I just think that if you're gonna get a player that you need for that short to mid range game, he's the guy you want on your team. Plus, he can do the punt return stuff, which is so critical. Number 3 for me, Courtland Sutton. You guys kind of nailed it on the head. He's a body catcher, doesn't create separation. However, if this guy hits his potential, he will be an X receiver, wide receiver 1, mammoth dude, long arms, 6'3", etc., etc. It's a complete projection to put him at 2. This 3. This wide receiver class kind of stinks. There's a lot of solid guys, so just on projection alone, I got to put him up there. Number 4 for me, DJ Moore. You guys again have said it. He's crafty. He is the tactician of this group when it comes to route running. I probably should have had him at wide receiver 2 or 3, but I just really like the things that Sutton and Pettis can do. But DJ Moore, route running impeccable. I think he's a little dog too. He's just got a lot of fight to him. Number 5 for me, Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup is another guy who, if he hits his potential, will be a wide receiver 1. I think he's 6 foot, 200 or so, but he's just one of those guys who's just feisty. I will comp him to a slightly lesser version of Michael Thomas from the Saints. Alex, hit us off. You've got one receiver on your list. It's Courtland Sutton. Good job.
Yeah, I have him in Debbie, so I like to watch the people I'm going to take. But
there you go.
I really like him, though. I think you guys, you had him high, but I think you guys are underselling him. And what's interesting is, to Jeremy's point, I kind of see him the opposite way, is that sometimes I have a concern with him that he plays with his size too much, and the fact that I think the separation is still the weakest point of his game, and he will default to trying to out-position somebody and out-body somebody, which is something that I think is probably one of his biggest weaknesses. But in terms of strengths, I really like him a lot. I think, his combine is just crazy. I don't know if you guys have seen his spider web, but it's insane. He posted, it was like a 6.5 something 3 cones, something insane like that. I don't know. I was blown away by that. Yeah, it was like let me look it up. It was a 6.57. Yeah.
Ooh.
And I just love I think that my favorite part about him is just how he moves in the middle of the field. And like that's my type of receiver, is somebody who can run a post and catch a post and work well and like digs, and he just has that frame where he can just catch anything, and that plus the athleticism. I really think he's going to work out. I have really high hopes for him.
Garrett, you did so good on your homework. You got a list for me?
No, and I think we'll spare that so that we can get to this podcast. I'll just say that Antonio Callaway is really awesome. Really the only guy in this class who, when I watched him, I just thought, wow, this guy seems significantly more talented than everyone else in the field. He just doesn't have that production, and he has the off-the-field concerns. So, yeah, it's a whole class of day 2 guys. I'm not enthralled with it at all.
All right, tight end, Jeremy, you're the only person with people on your list, because who needs to watch tight ends? You can just list them off, and if you've got something to say on somebody, you can.
Yeah, that's fine. Number 1, I have Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State. He's a small school guy, but he just kind of really shows everything you'd want in tight end. 164 receptions and 18 touchdowns in 2 years. And also he's a really good blocker, which is really rare these days.
Hold on. I have Dallas Goedert takes. He's good blocker because he's just, I mean, it's like if you put Lawrence Taylor against a JV team.
Yeah. Oh, completely fair.
Okay.
But in this class, there's not very many good blockers. So that did stand out. If there are teams that still, want a guy who can help in the run game, that's a factor. Because, I mean, next I have Mike Gesicki from Penn State, kind of the spark freak that everyone's obsessed with. I don't like him nearly as much as everyone else does, but
he's the second overall in the RAS score.
Yeah, and for that reason, he'll get drafted and he'll do well. But last year, he had 9.9 yards per catch, which for a guy that's got that kind of speed at that size, it should be a lot higher, I would think.
That's not great.
He could go really high and he could do well, but I don't like this class in general. Evidenced by Hayden Hurst at 3. He's going to be 25 years old. He only had 3 touchdowns in the last 2 years, which is almost hard to do when you're 6'4". I actually checked 3 websites because I was sure that it was just a typo or something like that. But
it wasn't.
4.67 speed. He's also not a great blocker. Guys are talking about him in top 50, and I don't think he's anywhere near that.
I've seen him first round mocks a lot lately.
I think that's insane, and I don't see it at all. Number 4 is Ian Thomas, the local guy from Indiana. He's a nice combination of everything else. He's a high spark guy. I think he was in the 91st percentile. Has really good hands, 15 yards per carry, and also a decent blocker. So that's valuable at this point.
Hasn't he only caught 19 catches? Doesn't he only have 19 receptions for his career?
Something like that. It was really low. He's a big projection guy, but he did have 5 touchdowns. So if it was on 19 receptions, that's a pretty high percentage.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I'll take
that's
that.
A good percentage.
Watching Indiana's offense, which may offend some local viewers, is painful to watch. So
they know.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. It was painful to watch.
It's bad.
Number 5 is Mark Andrews, just because it's a horrible class. But I do like him in the fact that he's a developed receiver. He is excellent in the red zone. He can run many different types of routes. But he's almost just an oversized wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's not a good blocker at all. But sub 4.6 speed at 255 pounds is worthwhile. So
I feel like he's going to be at least the second tight end taken.
He probably, to be honest, I'm guessing Gesicki goes first just because some team is going to be obsessed with his freak athletic scores. But I think Hurst and Andrews are probably second and third. Ian Thomas is probably one of those guys that's going to go way later and then ends up outproducing all of them.
In 2 years. Yeah, no,
It's a really
this class is bad.
It's horrible.
Yeah, Dallas
Like,
Goedert is so bad. Like I watched him. I watched the first game I watched of him. Like, this is the guy. Like, because everyone was like,
Yeah.
you need to get on Dallas Goedert. He's really good. And I'm like, this is the guy you guys are hyping up. Then again, we had a very good tight end class last year. Getting to watch like Evan Ingram and Njoku and those guys. So, anyways,
I knew it was bad when people were hyping up Dalton Schultz from Stanford, who can't catch a football. But he's one of the best blockers in this whole class, regardless of position. But when people were putting him in the 4th round, I knew we were in trouble.
He's going to be a tackle.
Yeah, Stanford has like 3 18-year-olds who have already usurped him. So,
yeah, it's a horrible class. So I apologize for even looking at them.
All right, moving on to offensive tackle. Let's just hit these pretty quick, Jeremy. You and I'll read mine. I'll let you read yours, and we can argue about them real quick if we want to, because we need to keep this moving. Number 1, I got Connor Williams. 2, Mike McGlinchey. 3, Tyrell Crosby. 4, I'm gonna butcher this name, Chukwuma Okorafor. And 5, Jaron Christian from Louisville. Hit me with your top 5.
I just didn't put Akuma 4 in my top 5, just so I didn't have to say his name. Number 1, I actually have Isaiah Wynn, simply because he played offensive tackle when he was in college. And I wouldn't be surprised if a team, puts him at right tackle or even maybe left tackle in the offseason just to see if he can do it. The number 1 reason everyone says he can't is because he's 6'2". But at worst, you have the second best guard in the class, I think. Number 2 is Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame. Number 3, Connor Williams. Maybe the only guy in this class that I see being a true potential left tackle. I think there's a lot of other guys that'll just be really good right tackles. Number 3, Tyrell Crosby. Number 4, the much debated Colton Miller.
Okay, so I like where your head's at on Wynn. Mike McGlinchey, I think he's a right tackle. Pure and simple. Yeah. Put him there. He's fine. He'll be good. Connor Williams, if he is back to 2016 Connor Williams,
yes,
left tackle day 1. Tyrell Crosby, road grader type right tackle. I love him for the Colts in the 3rd round. I don't think he'll be there. If he's the pick at like 49, I don't think it's a reach.
No, and I really like him. And I've been, every time I write notes on him, I write Jack Muhart with a question mark. Is he an underdeveloped tackle that I overlooked, but someone's going to put him at left tackle or right tackle, and he's just going to be a monster against the run?
Yeah. Colton Miller, he's really, really bad, and you should be ashamed for having him in your list.
I should. I even wrote in my, to be honest, he shouldn't be anywhere near that, except for the fact that he's the prototype in terms, he's 6'8", that's a big boy.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He's an athletic.
He's a really good athlete. Yeah. But I even wrote, he's not even run block ready, which usually these guys, the one thing you can say is, they can't handle outside speed, blah, 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 blah. But at least they're, a mauler against the run. And he's not even that.
Reminds me of a certain Texas Tech tackle.
He's pretty bad.
He's pretty bad.
The 1st round talk, I think, is insane. I have him like in the 60s somewhere, and that's just because if I'm going to take a flyer on a guy that I think can be a left tackle, he might as well be big and athletic.
Yep. All right, that's enough. Chukwuma, another right tackle. Jaron Christian, he's a developmental guy. He's on my list. I like a lot of what he can do. I think he's an athletic guy. He's not as athletic as a Colton Miller, but he is better at technique than Colton Miller. So if I had to hedge my bets on one of those 2 guys, it'd be Jaron Christian. Moving on, interior O-line. This one, I love this class. We have needed guards for so long, and now there is a guard class that is worthy of taking someone high in the 2nd round. Quentin Nelson, I've looked for it. You cannot find anything bad about him. You can't.
He's perfect.
He's the perfect prospect, and it's bizarro world that he's going to drop out the top 5, but he will. Number 2 for me, Isaiah Wynn. Just like you said, I think you're right. The teams are going to try him at tackle, let him prove that he can't. But when he can go into tackle, he'll be nasty. Frank Ragnow, Arkansas, my number 3 guy. Just a just a mean dude. Like all 5 of these guys on my list are just mean dudes, and that's what you need in your interior line. Number 4, Will Hernandez. I loved to watch him play too. James Daniels, again, just I don't even want to get into him. The only thing you need to know about all 5 of them is that they're mean dudes and they're ready to body bag people on day 1. Jay?
Yeah, Nelson's obviously number 1, amazing prospect, blah, blah, blah. He's great. Don't take him at number 6, though. No, he'd be cool at number 6. But number 2, I've got Isaiah Wynn as well, just a mauler of a person in there. And that's the same thing with Will Hernandez. He's a pretty good athlete. And then his body type is crazy. It looks like Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles. Like, he's got these little legs and just this enormous upper body. And that's exactly how he plays. He plays like everybody's been saying bad things about him on the side, and he just wants to kick their butts. And then, so I've got first-round grades on all 3 of those guys. And then 4, I've got Austin Corbett. He's the only other one that I've watched, but he's pretty good too. He's got that shifting from left tackle to guard position thing, but he's really good pass protector, and he plays with a bit of a mean streak too. So yeah, it's a really good interior class from the 4 that I've watched.
James, it's all right. Jeremy, sorry, that little brain fart there. Jeremy, do you got anything you want to add?
Not really. I mean, Nelson, Hernandez are pure guards. James Daniels is a center who can play guard. Same with, right now actually has a season of experience at guard. Number 5, I have Billy Price. I think he might be stuck at center. He's pretty much a flawless prospect as a center. He had some injuries, and yeah, like people said, like he's comparable to Ryan Kelly, which I don't disagree with. He's just coming off an injury, so I dropped him a little bit, and he might not be as versatile. That's about it.
He's number 6 on my list. I debated him and James Daniels as I wrote my list very hard.
Yeah, one thing that's going to be interesting to see is if they do they're going to take an interior offensive lineman. If they take one that's a center / guard, because they brought in a few of those types of players in free agency, at least for visits, if not outright signing them. They've kind of seen that they've been looking at guys that can play center and guard.
Yeah, which is it is weird too, because of Kelly, and they liked Bond enough to start him last year, and then Person was really good when he played. So it's interesting that they've brought in so many center type guys. Didn't mean to interrupt. Alex, I'm going to skip you. Garrett.
Wait, real quickly. Yeah, so I just I don't know if we want to talk about this when we get to the Colts or now, but I've been thinking a lot about Nelson at 6, and is now the time to talk about that, or do we want to do that later?
We're gonna do that later.
All right.
Spoiler alert. It's Alex's number 1 Colts player. Anyways, let's move on to the defensive side. Garrett, I'm just going to assume you didn't watch offensive linemen.
I've actually just been sitting here. I went into my kitchen and made a sandwich while you guys were talking, and I've just been sitting here eating it. And I finished it while you guys were talking about O-line. So, yeah, go right ahead.
Perfect. That fits your brand. It's right on the money. Okay, let's start with defensive line. Alex, why don't you hit us up?
All right, D-line.
We talked about him last week. So.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Nothing's changed. Mo Hurst won. In my general, I guess, feeling of this class, I think he's risen a little bit for me to the point where, like, he's sneaking into the conversation where, like, if we took him at 12, that would be cool. I don't know. I really like him. Vita Vea is my number 2. Taven's 3. And then I just don't like Deron Payne, really, so I put the other 2 guys I watched ahead of him, which is Harrison Phillips, who I don't particularly like, and Michael Hill, who I do particularly like, but I think Phillips has more upside.
All right, Jeremy, what you got?
I just have to know, who is Michael Hill? I haven't even watched him.
Michael
Hill, the guy from Ohio State?
Yeah, he's like not even their starter.
What a surprise.
Good guess, Jeremy.
Yeah, I guess.
He's a good player.
Okay. I just assumed it was typo and it was supposed to be BJ Hill, but Ohio State. Number 1, Maurice Hurst. I'm praying that he falls to the second round. I would be so excited. I think he just changes the defensive line instantly in terms of pass rush. Number 2, Vita V. Number 3, Brian Taven. Again, I don't love Deron Payne either, but this is a really bad class, and he did show moments of greatness, so I'd take a shot on it in the second round. Number 5 is Harrison Phillips, but there's a huge gap for me between Payne and Phillips, like a round and a half.
Jay, let me guess. Maurice Hurst, number 1.
That's the one. And that's all I've watched, but yeah, Hurst is really good. That's like he could be steal of the draft if he fell to the second round. I have him just outside the top 10, so if they traded down to 12, he'd be on a short list of guys that I'd want at 12. And the possibility of him dropping further than that is pretty enticing. And then beyond that, I haven't watched any of the other linemen.
Fair enough. Last week I gave you guys my rankings. I'll just run through them real quick. Hurst, Vita Vea, Deron Payne, Brian Taven, and my DL5, Derek Nottie. If you need a run stuffer, he is elite. I think he's the best run-stuffing D-tackle in the draft, and he's going to be a good value for a team in the second or third round. If you need that type of player, he's good. Garrett, you want to hit us up?
We already kind of talked about this last week, so I'll just say, again, I'm not a huge fan of Vita Vea. I think he's kind of just an Andrew Billings sort of level prospect, but maybe in this class, that's enough to kind of get him top 5 love. So that's fine.
All right. Let's move on to edge rushers. Again, we kind of talked about these last week, so let's get our 2 guests in on this. Let's go with Jay. Why don't you go first? Who are your top 5 edge?
So number 1 is still Chubb. I love Landry. I think he's really good too. And the idea of taking a non-force player with a top 10 pick is a little much if you would have told us this a year ago. But he's just such a good player, such a fundamental defensive end that he's got to be number 1 for me. He's got a really high floor, and it's pretty close to a safe pick in this draft. I've got Landry number 2. He'd be a great pick even in the top 10, but especially if they could possibly trade down. And then I've got Josh Sweat, Marcus Davenport, and Sam Hubbard. Those 3 are I really like Sweat. He's really athletic, which is a big bonus, and then he's actually a force player. So that's automatically bumping him up some. And then he's just so disruptive versus the run with potential versus the pass. Davenport I didn't love, but he's all right. You could take some a flyer on him. And then Hubbard was the next. He's a really good run defender. He's kind of going to be your strong side defensive end long term, and maybe be able to put together some pass rushing, but he's not going to be your number 1 rusher ever.
Okay. Jeremy, what you got?
Number 1 is Bradley Chubb. That should be no surprise. Number 2, Landry. It's been good to see that people are coming around on him. At first, everyone was projecting, will he make it to the Patriots and stuff like that? I think he's a top 15 pick for sure. I'm super happy to see that everyone on the podcast has Josh Sweat ahead of Marcus Davenport, because I think they're close, but I just think everyone talks about Davenport as, he's a high upside guy and he's a great athlete, but everything that we talk about, Josh Sweat actually does better. He's a better athlete. I think he has far more upside. He's just as developed against the run right now. We've said it a couple times amongst ourselves, but I almost see like a poor man's Jadeveon Clowney when I watch Josh Sweat. I think he uses his long arms, and he's nasty against the run. I've seen a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me say that he kind of played out of position at Florida State. They had him keeping an eye on the run rather than just pinning his ear back and going against the quarterback. If that's true, great. That's just more reason to take him ahead of Davenport. Davenport is 4 just almost by default in this class because I think there's a really big drop-off after those top 4 guys. But for a guy that played at UTSA, he only had 8.5 sacks last year, which you'd like to see him dominate that competition a little more. Number 5, I chose Lorenzo Carter. That was a close one for me. That's really just a swing for the fences type pick in the second round. He had the top RAS score ever for a linebacker, which is out of like 1,000 different prospects. He dropped back in coverage.
RAS, for anyone who... RAS, just context. RAS means relative athletic score, and it's basically... It levels out everyone's scores and uses a bunch of statistics to rank people based on their scores, and that's what RAS means. We've said it a couple times, and I didn't mention it, so sorry. Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's comparable to Spark, I guess, if people are familiar with Spark at all. At Georgia, he actually dropped back in coverage quite a bit, which is a bonus because I think he's a nice 3-4 outside linebacker. I'd be a little more concerned with him in a 4-3, but, I mean, fit your scheme to make the talent work, I guess. At worst, I think you get an elite special teams player, which there's a room for those guys in the league. So that's my number 5.
Shaq Griffin. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think anything's changed for us from last week. The guy that I finally decided on my Edge 5 was Ogbonio Okoronkwo, and the only reason I decided on him there is because I think that even at 6'2", 251, I think he's got some pass rush specialist ability, and that's what I think if we're going to draft somebody this year, maybe it would be that, but I think a position change is in the works for him still. I think he ends up being a linebacker. Okay, moving on. Alex Garrett, don't be offended. I'm skipping you guys for this because we talked about last week. Off-ball linebacker. We hit these up a few weeks back. I think I finally settled in on. It was about a month and a half ago, I think maybe. I finally settled into my rankings. I'm going to start with our resident linebacker expert, Alex. Let's hear your top 5, man.
Yeah. So Roquan definitely won. There's definitely seemed to be momentum that might end up being the pick, and though he's not the top guy on my board, I'd be thrilled just because he's so good, and it's exactly what this defense needs in both a skill set and in personality. Then Leighton Vander Esch is my number 2. He was this high before the combine, and he's certainly here after that combine. Huge fan of him. Think again, not a guy you look at 6, but a guy you look at 12. Would be really happy with him there. 3 is Rashaan Evans. The first time I watched him, I was a little lower on him. I think Then
I went on the pod with Garrett, and he talked some sense into me.
It's just like he he does the things that I like, and I don't know why it took me a little bit to get. I think I had to get over a bit of a stigma I have, just like with people who don't tackle well, but like he does the things that I really care about from a linebacker, except tackle. But it's, to me, that's sort of not the most important thing, even though it kind of is for a linebacker. But that's beside the point. So I have Rashaan number 3, although pretty comfortably behind those other 2. Still take him around 1 though. And then it's just the other 2 guys I've watched. Shaquem Griffin, number 4. He's really good. I would take him I'd take him with one of round 2 picks. I'd be really happy. Just the speed he plays with is at another level, and you can utilize that in a defense. Like that 4.38 speed wasn't a fluke. He's just incredible, and he has good linebacker skills too. And then Edmonds is number 5. He's the only other guy I've watched. I have talked about this probably ad nauseum at this point. I just don't think I've again grown a little bit on him to the point where I'd be cool with him in round 2 probably, just because I think he's going to be good somewhere, but not top 10, and certainly not above any of these other linebackers, just because he doesn't do any linebacker things quite really well. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens to him. I'm really hoping we don't end up with him. but we'll see how that goes.
I gotta hand it to you, putting Shaq Griffin in your top 4.
Nah.
All right, Jeremy, go ahead.
Number 1, I have Roquan Smith. He's as close to a perfect linebacker prospect as I've watched in the past couple of years. The only knock you can that you
sorry,
can
I'll
give
just
is that
he's the best one. He's the best one I've seen, so I'd echo that.
And I loved Reuben Foster, but Roquan is
better. He's
so
better
much better. He's significantly better to me. I hate the idea of taking a linebacker in the top 10 typically, but I'd make an exception for him. Tremaine Edmonds is reluctantly my linebacker too. I find that I'm just hating the talk around him more than I'm actually hating him as a prospect. If I hear that he's 19 years old one more time, my head's going to explode.
I think Roquan's like 6 months older than him. I think I read that.
Yeah. It's something about being below 20 that everyone just freaks out about. And I do get that he's got great athleticism. He's got ideal size, or above ideal size, really. He's almost sized like an edge guy. But people are overlooking a lot of stuff in his game. When I watched him at first, I thought he was way too aggressive. I thought he bit on play actions and fakes far too often. But if you could ever build a linebacker prospect to mold, it would be him. So I do have a first-round grade on him. Number 3 is Rashaan Evans. He's one of my favorite linebackers in this draft, and I think he's kind of gone overlooked at this point. I think there's just so much excitement about the other guys. One thing I like about him is he feels like a prototypical Mike linebacker from 10 years ago, but there's still a lot of modern stuff to his game. He can drop back in coverage. He's actually one of the best edge rushers statistically in this class, which is just another thing that a good coordinator can use him for, especially on third downs. Number 4 is LVE, which I think he's actually more what people think Tremaine Edmonds is when they look at him.
Agreed.
He's got the size. He can cover tight ends. He can blitz. I believe he was the highest statistical run-stopping linebacker in this class. I would be much more happy with him than Edmonds at their respective positions, especially if he falls in the second round like people are suddenly talking about. Number 5 is Malik Jefferson. He looks the part, and he needs a lot of training. Yeah. But he's probably the best athlete of the bunch. He has amazing closing speed if he can get a clean look at the ball carrier. Very solid tackler, doesn't have a lot of missed tackles or anything like that. But he needs a very specific role, or he needs a really good coach, or both, ideally.
Yeah, he's gonna need a good coach. His reading keys is really bad. He's not his mental game is weak.
Yeah, he's bad right now. But I mean, a lot of these guys are a bit of projection, and I think he could be really good. But I'm talking like middle of the second round or later type projection. So, but he's pretty good.
Jay.
So number 1's Roquan. Obviously, he's the best linebacker in the class. It's really not particularly close. I actually have Rashaan Evans number 2. He's one of my favorite players in the class. He's so violent. You watch him; he'll take on any blocker and just do everything he can to throw his body at them and knock them out of the way. And he's also a really good blitzer. But he can also cover too, like Jeremy said. So I'm a really big fan of him. Number 3, I have Leighton Vander Esch. For all the reasons that Alex said. He's so athletic and he covers a lot of ground and can tackle well. And then 4, I have Tremaine Edmonds. You can see he's not bad at all. I don't think he's bad, but he's not as good as these other guys are. You're just betting on that athletic upside. But I still have a first-round grade on all 4 of these guys. And then my fourth is Fred Warner. I really like him a lot, actually. I started watching him, and he's a really good in coverage. He's kind of linebacker that he's going to be, to start with, probably a nickel linebacker, if not a full-time starter. But with how much teams play nickel now, that's a guy that's going to be on the field most of the snaps anyway. He's good in coverage, and he covers a lot of ground. He's got really good range for his size. He's not that big, but he's really got good range, and he's a good wrap-up tackler. So I'm a big fan of Fred Warner, day 2.
You there?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, sorry, I felt like you dropped out there. Got really quiet.
Yeah, I kind of ended the sentence in a weird spot.
Yeah, it's okay. Tell Patsy I said hi. For me, linebacker rankings, number 1, your number 1 overall draft pick, Roquan Smith. He will be a Colt. I feel it in my bones. That's where I'm projecting. It's not who I want number 1, but he gonna be the number 1 pick, and that's okay, everybody. He's got everything that you want, everything that you need from a linebacker. He's extremely smart. Imagine him and Hooker running the defense for the next 10 years, and you'll get a little happy inside. Number 2, Leighton Vander Esch. When I first saw this guy's name, I said that's the whitest name I've ever heard in my life. And then I looked at him, and it's like, this is the whitest BYU dude I've ever seen. He looks like a dude straight out of Idaho. I mean, it's
Brent,
yeah.
Brent, you've seen a show called Blue Mountain State, right?
Yeah. He is Thad Castle. Like he is Thad Castle.
Even plays for Boise State, which I'm pretty sure is 90% of the inspiration for that show. So it's perfect.
Yes, yeah. He's I mean, prototypical bald white linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch, except he's just really, really good. He's very, very good. I really hope he slides to the second round like some people are saying, because after we take Roquan Smith, and for some reason he's there at our double back-to-back picks, how awesome would it be to see a Leighton Vander Esch Mike and a Roquan Smith Will linebacker team? You don't even have to worry about a Sam. It'd be so good. Now,
I think just on that point, I think Ballard in his press conference said something along the lines that like Sams are only playing like 25% of the snaps.
Yeah, they are.
Which is incredibly, which I appreciate a lot, and that was insightful, and it makes me at least feel better about the fact that we only really need to add 2 linebackers, not 3.
It's seriously so refreshing to hear somebody understand that it's a passing league. Yes. And not talk about stopping the run, and we need to load up on our base defense.
Hey. He can't hurt you anymore. He's gone.
TJ Green's still here.
Okay. And the
yeah.
The stars
are still there. Every time we watch All-Pro Landon Collins play for a different team.
Okay. He can't hurt you anymore. Moving on. Number 3, I got Tremaine Edmonds. Total projection. Total freak show. Excited to see where he lands. I got number 4, Fred Warner. Now, everything that Jay just said about Fred Warner, about him being able to cover, et cetera, I think he's we talk about Sam linebackers being able to cover, being able to rush the passer at some points. I think that's Fred Warner. Yeah, he's a limited role player, but I like him. Rashaan Evans, I've made my quips throughout this draft process. I think he's got the mental ability to play the game. I think he's still learning how to play linebacker. I just have and you see all these highlight hits that are just awesome. But with every highlight hit, you got 5 tackles he misses or doesn't wrap up on, and it's really hard for me to watch. It was just really hard for me to watch and not think about Antonio Morrison. And I know it's don't comp players. I'm not comping him, but just Antonio Morrison misses tackles like every play. But anyways, that's where I'm at. Garrett, what you got for linebackers?
I would echo Alex's rankings of Roquan, and then LVE, then Rashaan, and But I would, in terms of coming to grip, I guess we're going to talk about Roquan being maybe the first pick later, right? You said?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just save my takes.
We're almost there. We'll get there. Let's go cornerbacks. We've talked about these before. I'm going to go with mine real quick. Jeremy and I actually have the same rankings, so props to you. Denzel Ward, Josh Jackson, Jair Alexander, Isaiah Oliver, Mike Hughes. Josh Jackson, probably my favorite for the Colts. I've said that a bunch. I would be ecstatic if he fell to the second round. Don't think he's going to. He looks like a Seahawks pick to me. Anybody want to throw anything? We all have the same guys. Anyone want to throw anybody else out?
I'll just say that I'm not, though he's on that list. It's mainly just because I didn't watch anybody else. I don't like. I'm not a huge Jair Alexander fan after another rewatch, but I really like the top 4 guys that I have.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, Denzel Ward's number 1 by far. Don't believe the hype about his height being a huge issue. I just looked it up, and he's only 5/8 of an inch shorter than Darrelle Revis. Like, that's barely even a half inch. Let's slow down on him being such a short corner that he's going to get bodied all the time now.
Does 5/8 matter?
Did anybody here watch? Okay, yeah. Did anybody here watch Mike Hughes from UCF?
Yeah,
I did. I was a big fan.
He was a nice, nice player.
Yeah, all right.
And he can kick return.
Yes, he can.
So
can Josh Jackson, Jair Alexander, and Denzel Ward.
Yeah, but Josh Jackson is slow.
Yes, but he's still good at it. But
yeah, that's
maybe not in the NFL. All right. What'd you say, Garrett?
Never mind.
Okay. I'm still thinking about the 5/8 thing.
Gotcha.
Let's move on to safeties. We all have the consensus same top 2. Derwin James and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Everyone's got a 1-2 that way, and I don't think that it's recency bias or anything from that. I think we all firmly here believe that Derwin James is just one hell of a football player. Anybody disagree?
Nope.
I'd say that my biggest issue with him early on is that I pegged him as a strong safety, based on his build and just a lot of the talk around him. But he's got good range. And he could even play cornerback, I think. More than Minkah, actually.
I agree. He's just such a good DB, man. I love the guy. We'll talk about him in just a second, but I think that he's great. Outside of that, no one else has any other rankings except for me and you, Jeremy. So I had Justin Reed, Ronnie Harrison, and Jesse Bates III, and you had Ronnie Harrison, Justin Reed, Jesse Bates III. I think that Justin Reed and Ronnie Harrison are around 1-2 guys. What about you? Like 1.5, like in between.
Yeah, just outside. Those are guys that, well, maybe not a big need. If they were the pick at 36 or 37, I wouldn't be mad. Ronnie Harrison would actually be the perfect combination with Hooker, in my opinion. He is more of a pure strong safety, extremely violent, hits guys, really advanced diagnosis against the run, has the ability to blitz. Justin Reed, I don't know if you guys have talked to him, versatile guy, really good in coverage, could probably even play nickel cornerback. And to me, Jesse Bates is just kind of a lesser version of Justin Reed. So I like both.
I think Jesse Bates is extremely underrated right now, like in the community of Draft Twitter and Draftniks. Now, let me ask you, where do you have him playing, strong or free?
I mean, he's versatile. To be honest, I would have him primarily as a free, but again, a guy that I think could cover nickel, like slot guys.
Yes. I'm with you. We're on the same page.
I wouldn't put him at strong safety. He wouldn't be a pure strong safety to me. I don't think his body would hold up, to be honest.
I agree. I'm with you. And he's going to be a really good special teams player. That's just...
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
I was just going to say, after those guys, I think there's a really big drop-off of talent. My next 2 guys are Tavarius Moore from Southern Miss and Dane Cruikshank from Arizona, and those guys are big-time athletes that are a lot of projection.
Yeah, isn't the Cruikshank guy like 99 percentile spark guy?
Yeah, he's a freak. He's kind of along the lines of who are we talking? Gesicki from Penn State. Just a guy that's just almost pure projection, but he's a freak athlete. And the right defensive back coordinator could do some good work with him. But again, those guys are pure projection to me. They have huge flaws in their game right now, and I wouldn't look at them before the third round. The other guys, I think, are all top 64 picks.
All right. Good. Thank you. All right. Now, we're almost done. We've been going a while. We've got 2 more lists to go over. Do you guys want to do overall top 5 first or Colts top 5 first?
Let's do overall.
All right. Who wants to start? Jay, you're starting us off.
I'll go first.
Jay, overall, start us off.
So my overall list is the exact same as my Colts list, spoiler alert, except I have Baker Mayfield number 1. If you believe that he's the best quarterback in the draft like I do, and you believe that he's that quarterback's the most valuable position, which it is, then he has to be number 1 on your board. Number 2, I've got Bradley Chubb. Number 3, I've got Derwin James. And number 4, I've got Quentin Nelson.
That's wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, that was wrong. So 3 is 3 is Derwin James. 4 is Denzel Ward. And 5 is Quentin Nelson.
All right, Jeremy, what you got?
I put emphasis on positional value for the top overall 5. So Josh Rosen was my number 1 quarterback, so he's my number 1 prospect. Bradley Chubb 2 over Quentin Nelson because I just think edge is significantly more important than interior O-line. 4 Baker Mayfield and 5 Saquon Barkley.
Alex.
I had Nelson number 1, Derwin number 2. And then slight, I guess that's a tier. And then my next tier is just Landry, Chubb. And then the next tier under that is Roquan at 5.
Garrett.
I got Nelson, Derwin, Roquan, Lamar Jackson, Harold Landry.
Okay. I have Nelson, Derwin, Chubb, Lamar Jackson, and Roquan as my 5th overall. So let's do it.
Oh wait, sorry. I read my Colts board really. My overall is Nelson, Derwin, Roquan, Denzel, Ward, and then Harold Landry. That's my Colts list, or that's my overall list.
All right, now it's time for the Colts list. All right, let's debate it. All right, number 1. Let's just go number 1 for everybody. I'll read them off, and then Garrett, you got to tell us who your number 1 is because you didn't write anything down. My number 1, Derwin. Jay and Jeremy have Bradley Chubb number 1. Alex has Quentin Nelson number 1, and Garrett has
Nelson
number 1.
Hey.
All right. I value all of your opinions. I've just fallen in love with Derwin James, the athlete, the product, the prospect, everything. I'm a big fan. I think he brings such a lot to the table. I got him as my Colts number 5, even though we've got Gathers and Farley. I think the things that this guy can bring to your team far exceed what they can bring to your team. And let's be honest, we've talked about him as a DB. There could be times where Derwin James on the field with Hooker and Farley or Gathers. It wouldn't be out of the thing because he's just such a good DB. Your guys' thoughts on Chubb versus Nelson?
I think that if I look at the top of this class and I just try to pick out guys who I think can make an all-pro list, maybe in their career, Nelson, Derwin, and Roquan are those guys that stand out to me. Unfortunately, they play respectively offensive guard, safety, and linebacker, which speaks to how much I hate this class. Because I was talking with Justice Mosqueda, and we agreed that this class is awesome at all the positions that don't really matter or aren't that interesting, at least.
Right.
And I think that's the best way to describe it. So that's my frustration with it. But that's why I'm iffy on Roquan as the number 1 pick if that's what happens, just because I think he's an amazing player. But it's just so frustrating to be picking in that top 5 range, or close to it at least, and to not come away with a premier position player.
Moving on to the next one. Number 2.
Yeah, let me jump in here real quick on Derwin versus Chubb, because I'm really close. You could almost talk me into Derwin. He's my favorite player I've scouted in a couple of years. And I just barely have Chubb over him because of positional value. I'd probably rather have a B-plus pass rusher than an A versatile safety, even though it's really close.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Fair enough.
And along those lines, for me, just quickly, if you have pick 6 and the next pick you have without a trade back is 36, to me, you got to take Chubb because the comparable talent that you're going to get at edge at 36 is not even close, whereas at guard, you could get a guy like Frank Ragnow, and at linebacker, one of these linebackers is going to drop to the second round. So that was kind of the deciding factor for me. It's just that the drop-off at edge is so significant.
All right, our number 2 list, starting with me going, I have Roquan as my number 2 player that I'd love to see. Jay has Derwin, Jeremy has Quentin, Alex has Derwin, and Smiley has...
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
Who's your number 2 player on your Colts board?
Oh, I would go with Derwin.
Okay. For me, I'm the odd man out on this one again. Roquan, for me, again, I've talked about it. I think him... there's just nothing wrong with him as a prospect. There is. I take that back. He's got some issues getting off blocks, I would say, but other than that, leadership, side to side, speed, everything you want in a linebacker that we've desperately needed. A linebacker like Roquan would have won us 4 games in 2016, specifically the Lions game. I can think off the top of my head where Theo Riddick and whoever their other running back is just ran 200 yards or caught passes for 200 yards. Roquan wouldn't let that happen. But anyways, that's beside the point. So nothing really there to talk about. This is where we get into some interesting differences. My number 3 overall player for the Colts board is Bradley Chubb. Jay's is Denzel Ward. Jeremy's is Roquan. Alex is Harold Landry over Chubb. And Garrett, your number 3 player would have been...
I would also go Landry, even though he's at the bottom end of my top 5, just because I think he's... Now is where I start to look at, more positional value, and I think he's the best edge in this class. So,
Okay. Jay, Denzel Ward, you think he's a fit with this new scheme?
I think he can play zone. I think he'd be a good fit. I think he's just an excellent corner all around, and he can do whatever you need him to do. There's the question about Ballard, though, with whether he would value someone that is that short. I don't think it's a problem, but it could be. He's never shown an interest in drafting a cornerback that short. But I think he's a really, really good and very talented cornerback that he can be your lockdown number 1 corner. I don't think that there's any issue with him at all.
Okay. Number 4 overall player on our boards. Mine is Nelson. Jay's is Nelson. Jeremy's is Landry. Alex's Chubb. And Garrett's is...
I'll put Roquan here. I'm not going to take a super strong stance against him.
Okay. Jeremy, Landry, do you like him at 6? Or does he have to be a trade down guy?
Problem is you're going to trade down to 11 or 12, and I'm not sure you're going to get Landry or Roquan there. He would be... I would understand the pick at 6 if Chubb is gone because you want an edge rusher. And he's the best pure edge rusher in this class, I think. I don't want to hear concerns about he doesn't fit into a 4-3. If your elite edge rusher doesn't fit into your scheme, then you have a bad scheme. So I wouldn't love it, but I'm not going to be mad at that, especially because obviously this coaching staff has confidence in Harold Landry being able to return to 2016 status.
Yeah. Okay, number 5 on everyone's board. Harold Landry for me and Jay, Denzel Ward for Jeremy, Roquan for Alex, and number 5 for Garrett is...
I'll put Chubb.
Okay. All right, so we all have very similar top 5 players, I think we've got some people. I think Denzel Ward and who's the odd man out for? Oh, I don't see Roquan on Jay, and I don't see Derwin on Jeremy. So those are kind of the odd men out, I think, there.
Yeah, Roquan would be the sixth one for me. He's just outside of it. I really like him. I think he's really good. I didn't have a top 10 grade on him.
Jeremy, you want to justify your actions?
To be honest, my top 6 is Chubb, and then a huge gap where I just want trade back over everything else.
Okay.
And then it's Nelson, Roquan, Landry, Ward, and Derwin is the 6th one. So
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also here for the trade down. Ideally, that's where I would get Landry or Isaiah Wynn or something at like 10 or 12 or whatever.
Out of curiosity, what don't you like about athletic leaders on the defense who are versatile and can play every position on the defense?
Wait, are you
talking about Saquon Barkley, obviously?
Okay.
Wait,
Let's talk
I don't even know. Was that about Roquan or Derwin?
Derwin.
Oh, okay.
I love him. I have him in the same group as Denzel Ward. When you will see the official "We're Going Streaking" board that will be posted on Thursday.
Very nice. Okay, all right. We have been going for a long time.
I still need to get my Nelson takes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hit me with your Nelson take.
So
Off podcast.
yeah. So I've
All
been
right,
thinking
everybody.
about this for a while, and I really think I've settled into Quentin as my number one player, and I go through three things, and I'm just like, okay, so the best player available, and I think he's the best player in the draft. I don't really know. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on scouting interior offensive linemen, but it's kind of apparent, and it's in fact obvious, and smart people are supporting him, so I have no doubt that he's what people say he is. So if you assume that, then you look at the positional need, or you can look at the need on the team. Of course, there's a clear need for an alpha on the offensive line, and for talent on the offensive line, frankly, and he would certainly provide that. But then what really sold it for me is, of course, the main thing is that he plays in what's perceived to be a non-valuable position at offensive guard. And while that is in theory true, I while writing this article, I've just been thinking about, I've been looking at the past contracts that these guards are getting on their second contract, and they are massive numbers. So I think we might be seeing a shift. Joel Bitonio got 5 years, $50 million. Zeitler got 5 years, $60 million. What did Norwell get 5 years, $68 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to talk to Justice about this because he never shuts up about it. It's every day. It's like offensive guard contracts versus running back contracts, and
no, it's really interesting, and I think that there's nothing that is more indicative of what is actually valued than what contracts they get. And I mean, these are contracts that put them up with any other non-quarterback in the league, any non-quarterback or edge rusher in the league. And I don't know, just something interesting to think about. If you're getting the best player at a position that's actually sort of just middle of the line average, that's what sold it to me as number one.
Yeah, and I think that extra value that a really elite offensive lineman can give you, just if you think of it sort of mathematically, like a percentage of snaps that will allow a pressure across your O-line, I think that bonus that a really top-tier, all-pro caliber offensive lineman can give you is significant, as opposed to replacement-level production. So that's how I would justify it to myself. And also, there isn't that level of talent among really any of the premier positions.
Yeah, that's really the most important part, is that there's just not a guy who's close to him at a position that is inherently more valuable.
Right.
I agree with what you said, but yeah, everything you said is right, and he is the best player. He is the best player at his position that anyone else is compared to their position, which is why I have him as the best player in the draft. So, Wait, I do, right? Yeah, I do. Okay. Just double checking. Him and Derwin go back and forth in my mind because I think in the next few years we're gonna look back and see why wasn't Derwin James talked about better than what he was. Okay, last question. Everyone who sent in your questions and takes, guess what? We're not doing them. I'm sorry. You've wasted your time. If you've listened to this for an hour and a half, waiting for your question to be answered, you have wasted your time.
Oh my god.
I apologize.
We're never gonna get questions again.
I'll give you this. You can ask the questions to me on Twitter, and if they're good, I will answer.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I'm going to respond to your questions off of our Twitter feed after this. I apologize for this taking so long. Okay, in 3 days' time, the first round is wrapping up. What did the Colts do on night one, starting with Jay? What happened?
Most likely, they traded down and they took Roquan Smith.
Jeremy.
First, they traded Andrew Luck, and then they took Baker Mayfield. No.
Isn't that what the Moving the Chains guys did?
Probably.
They had us. No, they had us moving back up to 2. We traded up to 2.
So that's what we're going to do. Because that's logical to trade out of 3 and then trade back up to 2. I think Chubb is gone by 6. I'll say they trade back to 11 or 12. And I think that they will take, I don't know, a safety.
Alex, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it ends up being a trade back with either Arizona or Miami, just because I feel like Buffalo's going to go higher. Miami makes a lot of sense to me if they want to go get Rosen or Mayfield if he doesn't go 3. So I think we trade back to 11 with the Dolphins, and we take Tremaine Edmonds to break my heart.
Garrett, what you got?
I haven't been paying attention to the rumor mongering at all, but I'll go with the sense of optimism and say we'll trade down to mid-early first and take Isaiah Wynn, and then with our other first-round pick that we will have acquired by that point, take Will Hernandez. Okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant Harold Landry with the first pick, and then Will Hernandez. Sorry.
I like it. I like
Doubling down on guards.
Yeah, hey. It's not a bad... Hey, Matt Slauson. That's all I'll say there. For me, ready for it? Stay put at 6. Take Roquan Smith. So... I know that'll be some people don't.
It's like not fun, but that's probably realistic, to be honest.
That's where I'm at, and we'll see who'll be right next time we talk to you guys here in a few. I don't know. We might be back draft night. We might not be. We haven't fully decided, but other than that, thank you everyone for listening all the way to this. We will answer your questions on our Twitter feed, and I apologize for not getting them to them tonight. Jay, Jeremy, it's good to talk to you guys again. Appreciate you coming on and spending an hour and a half, an hour 45 minutes with us talking draft. And for everyone listening, appreciate you. Have fun. It's draft Christmas. It's football Christmas coming in 3 days, and at least our team is not taking Josh Allen.
And the Colts have been naughty this Christmas.
Yes. So appreciate you all, and we will see you